Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of The Bearded Apologist. Today I'm taking a look at some comments that Pope Francis made during a tour in Asia. He made these comments regarding the nature of religion and the idea that all religions lead to God. These comments were made in Singapore on September 13, 2024. So let's take a look at the clip and then I'll have some comments about it afterwards.
On this final day in Singapore, September 13th, concluding his trip to Asia and the Pacific, Pope Francis spoke to young people at an interreligious gathering.
Tutte le religioni sono un cammino per arrivare a Dio.
Because every religion is a way to arrive at God.
Dirò una comparazione, sono come diverse lingue, diversi idiomi per arrivare lì.
Sort of a comparison, an example would be they're sort of like different languages in order to arrive at God.
Ma Dio è Dio per tutti.
But God is God for all.
E come Dio è Dio per tutti, noi siamo tutti figli di Dio.
And if God is God for all, then we're all sons and daughters of God.
Ma il mio Dio è più importante del tuo.
But my God is more important than your God.
È vero quello?
Is that true?
C'è un solo Dio lì. E noi sono idiomi, cammino, lingue per arrivare a Dio.
There's only one God, and each of us is a language, so to speak, in order to arrive at God.
Qualcuno è Sikh, qualcuno musulmano, qualcuno
Sikh, Muslim,
Hindi, qualcuno cristiano,
Indo,
ma sono
Christian.
diversi cammini.
There are different paths.
Understood?
So the comments made by the Pope are interesting, and I pulled a few of them out here to take a look at. One of them is that every religion is a way to arrive at God. He likens it to different languages. He says it's like different languages to arrive at God. He says that God is God for all. If God is God for all, then we're all sons and daughters of God. And then he says, he kind of raises this hypothetical objection, but my God is more important than your God. Is that true? There's only one God, and each of us is a language, so to speak, in order to arrive at God. Sikh, Muslim, Hindu, Christian, there are different paths. Now, as a side note, I know that many Catholics will point out that this statement was not given ex cathedra, which means from the chair. And that's a Latin phrase that essentially means that the Pope speaks with the authority of the office of Pope, and he issues infallible statements and so forth about Catholicism, about what the religion teaches. And that may be true, but it's still problematic because he is still representing, or rather misrepresenting, Christianity to the world. He's still making statements about Christianity to a global audience. And so those statements need to be addressed, and that's what I'm going to do here. So there are two main problems with what the Pope said. First of all, these teachings do not align with Christianity. And second, which is my larger point that I'll get to here momentarily, these statements are simply not true. As to the first point, that there are different ways or paths or languages or whatever term you want to use to get to God, that is simply not what Christianity teaches. In fact, Jesus himself said in John 14:6, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. That's a pretty clear statement that says there is no path to God. There's no path to the Father except through Jesus Christ. It doesn't really get any clearer than that. But also in Acts 4, Peter and John reiterate the same point by saying, this Jesus is the stone that was rejected by you, the builders, which has become the cornerstone. And there is salvation in no one else. For there is no other name under heaven given among men by which we must be saved. Now these are the apostles. These are Peter and John saying this way back in Acts. So, the bottom line about this is that whatever Pope Francis is teaching, it is not Christianity. It is not a belief that's held at all in what's called Orthodox, which is lowercase o Christianity. It's not biblical Christianity whatsoever. And he also teaches this idea that all of us are sons and daughters or children of God. But again, that's also not true. Now, it is true that we are all God's creation, that God loves the entire world, but only those who are born again are truly children of God. And there are several verses, I'll put them up here, that illustrate this point. Two of them in particular that are my favorites actually come from John. One is from John 8. Jesus was speaking to a group of Jews. They answered him and they said, "Abraham is our father." Jesus said to them, "If you were Abraham's children, you would be doing the works Abraham did. But now you seek to kill me, a man who has told you the faith that I heard from God. This is not what Abraham did. You are doing the works your father did." And they said to him, "We were not born of sexual immorality. We have one Father, even God." Now here's the kicker here. Jesus said to them, "If God were your Father, you would love me. For I came from God and I am here. I came not of my own accord, but he sent me." So Jesus himself is saying that there are people in the world who do not love God because they do not love Jesus. In John 12, Jesus cried out, "Whoever believes in me does not believe in me only, but in the one who sent me. The one who looks at me is seeing the one who sent me," which of course is God. So, we are not, as a human race, we are not all children of God in the biblical sense. Now, the second point, this is kind of a larger point I want to make in the video. This idea that every religion leads to God, or maybe that every religion teaches the same thing or teaches kind of the same fundamental core beliefs. If you look at just the surface level view of Christianity versus every other religion, they contradict each other. Christianity clearly teaches that Jesus Christ is the Son of God and that salvation is only found in him, that we have to have a saving faith in Jesus Christ to have eternal life. Every other religion denies that. Judaism certainly denies that. Islam denies that. The fact is, not all religions teach the same thing. Islam and Judaism, for example, disagree about who Muhammad is. Hinduism is not even a monotheistic religion. There are many gods. It's a polytheistic religion. There's many gods in Hinduism. Buddhism itself does not even believe in a god or a deity. Buddhism teaches that there are supernatural figures in their religion, but there is no god or deity in Buddhism. So just on the surface, all religions do not teach the same thing. They teach contradictory messages. They cannot be all true and all valid at the same time. If you want to believe that there are certain teachings, like the Golden Rule that maybe spans different religions, that's probably true. That's probably the case. You can find that in different religions. But as a whole, not all religions can possibly be true because they teach these contradictory things. But why is this idea so popular among people that all religions lead to God? Why do so many people embrace this, including the Pope? Well, the idea is that religion is not an objective claim about reality. It's not an objective truth claim. It's this notion that religion is merely a set of preferences or beliefs. So for example, I might believe that a certain type of food is better than another type of food. I might believe that a certain musician is better than some other musician. I might not like Taylor Swift, but I might like some other band or some other artist. So it's this idea, I think, that religion is just merely a set of beliefs and preferences. They're all subjective. It's just one person's opinion. But the fact is, all religions make truth claims about reality. They claim different things about God. They claim whether God exists or not, whether there's one God, whether there's many gods. They make claims about sin. They make claims about salvation. They make claims, obviously, about who Jesus is. Every religion makes objective truth claims about reality. These are not things that are just simply out here in space or have no connection with our existence here on earth. Whether or not Jesus came to earth and died for our sins, that's a truth claim. And in apologetics, there can be evidence to back that up. So, you can look at archaeology, for example. You can look at some of the sciences that back up claims in the Bible. There are ways to test and validate different claims about our faith versus other faiths. A lot of people don't like the idea of there being just one way to salvation because they say, well, that's intolerant of other people. There are good, sincere people in other faiths who have deeply held beliefs. They were raised in these religions. They're moral people. They're good people, and they sincerely believe in Buddhism or Islam or Judaism or what have you. How can we possibly say that they're wrong? But here's the thing. Sincerely believing that something is true does not make it true. If I come to you and I say, I sincerely believe that 2 + 2 is 5, that doesn't make it 5. 2 + 2 is still 4 no matter whether I believe it or not, no matter how I'm raised. There's probably a million different ways to do heart surgery on a patient, But if you're the patient going under the knife, you want that doctor to get the right way. You want him to use the correct way to operate on you. You don't care about these other ways of doing it. There's one way it's going to save your life. So again, sincerely believing in things, no matter how steeped you are in them, no matter how long you've been raised in them, that has nothing to do with truth or not. That does not alone make the belief true. You have to look at it and look at the evidence and say, is there a reason to believe in this? Is there evidence to believe in what I believe about God? Is there evidence to believe in God himself? These are questions that have objective answers, and it's fair to ask them of anybody, no matter what their religious tradition is. Now, there's another argument, and it's this kind of idea that, because we are limited, imperfect, mortal humans with a finite, understanding of the universe and so forth, we only have a limited knowledge about things, including God. And we express that knowledge through different religions. This idea is called religious pluralism, and it is expressed most famously in a parable called The Six Blind Men and the Elephant. I'm going to share a clip of apologist Frank Turk discussing this old parable and analyzing it and what it means for us. So let's take a look.
Can't all religions be true? Or can't all religions at least have some of the truth and none have all the truth? And this is quite often illustrated by the six blind men and the elephant. You ever heard this parable? This is what professors often use to try and convince students that, religions don't really have the truth. They kind of share the truth, but one is not really more true than the other. They think they have the truth, but they really don't. And it's illustrated this way. There are six blindfolded men. And one feels the ear of the elephant and thinks it's a fan. Another feels the side of the elephant and thinks it's a wall. Another grabs the tail and says, no, this is a rope. Another one grabs the leg and says, no, this is a tree. Another grabs the tusk and says, this is a spear. And another, of course, grabs the trunk and says, no, we've got a great snake here. Now, these six blind men are all supposed to represent the major world religions. They think they have the truth, but they don't really have the truth. They may have a piece of the truth, but they don't really have it. Now, how do you basically refute the conclusion that no religion is the truth? Here's the question to ask. What is the perspective of the parable teller? What is the perspective of the parable teller here? Can anyone tell me? Go ahead, loud, what? The parable teller can see everything. He can see the whole picture. The parable teller has an objective vantage point. It's like our position. We're looking at it and we're going, you knuckleheads, that's an elephant, right? So once you have an objective position, you can really see the truth. So what's the moral of the story? The moral of the story is, once I was blind, but now I see. What do I mean by that? Well, first of all, if you take off your blindfolds and see, you can see it's absolutely true that that is an elephant, that it's not a rope, that it's not a snake, that it's not a spear, a wall, or a tree, or any of those other things. It's an elephant. So truth is not relative to the individual, otherwise we wouldn't know the blind men were mistaken. We have an objective viewpoint, as the parable teller does, and we can see that the blind men were mistaken. Also, you can't know someone is wrong unless you know what is right. Let me state that another way. You can't know that someone is not right unless you know what is right. So for you to say that, no, that's not a fan, that's not a spear, that's not a rope, etc., you would have to know what it is, correct? So the bottom line to the whole thing is the pluralist believes everyone is blind but him. The pluralist is somebody who's saying, no, all religions lead up the mountain, they're all getting there. They don't have the truth, that they have some of the truth, and you can't really know the truth, all that nonsense, okay? Why is the pluralist given an objective position, but we can't have that same objective position? If we take off our blindfolds, we can see the truth as well. Do you see what I'm saying here? In other words, the parable as many college professors tell it, actually proves exactly the opposite to the point they're trying to make. They're trying to say that nobody has the truth, when the rest of us are going, yoo-hoo, Mr. Professor, that's an elephant. And we can do the same thing when it comes to religion. If we take off our blindfolds, we can discover the truth. And that's what we try and do in apologetics. We try and discover the truth, which is giving evidence for what you believe.
So some key takeaways here. This parable is sort of an attempt to deny the reality of absolute truth. It's this idea that, everybody has subjective experiences. They have different claims that can all be equally true and equally valid. So there's no real absolute truths. And that kind of translates into religion by saying, well, there's no way to say that any one particular religion is true or not. Well, here's the question, though. Is that true? Is the statement that there is no absolute truth, is that absolutely true? Does it apply to all people at all times and all places? Now, if that's absolutely true, then absolute truth does exist. If it's not absolutely true, then why is the person arguing it? Obviously, they're arguing that because they're saying that their view of truth or religion or reality is valid and your view is not. So if I come to you and say, look, you're being extremely intolerant by saying that there's only one way to heaven. There's no way that we can say who's right or who's wrong, but you're claiming that I'm wrong. You're claiming that you're right, that your view of it is right. So it's kind of a self-defeating argument, first of all. And interestingly, and Frank discusses this in the video, the parable teaches that we can, in fact, know truth. It does assume that the person who's telling the parable knows that there's an elephant. So, it's actually kind of self-defeating in that way as well. The parable teller, the person telling the parable, he's allowed to claim absolute truth and objective knowledge, but everybody else, all these other religions, they only have subjective knowledge. Well, isn't that a little bit contradictory? As Christians, we claim to have objective knowledge of God. We claim to have objective absolute truths in our beliefs about God. But here is this person telling the parable saying, hey, I know what the subject is. I know what the object in this parable is. It's the elephant. Everybody else kind of gets it wrong, but I know what it is. Well, again, that's contradictory. And it assumes that in the parable that we can, in fact, know what the object is in question, which is the elephant. So in the same way, we can, in fact, know things about God. We can study and look and say, here are things that are objectively true or objectively false about God. So actually, this is kind of this argument undermines, I think, he talks about this argument actually goes against religious pluralism. And, ultimately at the end of the day, look, what we believe about God, that must correspond or not with reality. It's either true or it's false. Either he exists or he doesn't. Either he's of this particular nature or he's of another nature. Either there are many paths to God or there's only one path to God. These are objective truth claims that we can debate, we can discuss. It's not simply enough, though, to kind of throw up our hands and say, well, everybody believes something different. We all have some grasp of truth. We all have some different understanding. That's just not true. There are things that are true and things that are false, and there are ways that we can evaluate the truth claims of all the religions, compare them to one another, compare them to, history, compare them to the sciences, compare them to logic, and we can determine in that way which worldview is accurate, which religion is true. That's the whole goal of apologetics. So I hope to shed some light not only on the issue of what Pope Francis said and how that does not line up with Christianity, but how the idea, this broader notion that all religions lead to God, that all religions are equally valid, equally true, that itself is just not true. So thank you for watching. Leave a comment, and we'll be back soon with our next video.